Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Pro Wrestling Escape podcast. Again, your weekly escape into everything that gets our wrestling brains fired up. I'm Kyle, and today we're going to dive into a topic that might stir up some memories, some disagreements, and maybe even a little nostalgia-induced pain. We're going to count down the top 5 worst Survivor Series pay-per-views of all time, not the ones that aged poorly or ones that you forgot that happened. I'm going to talk about the shows that truly missed the mark, the pay-per-views that left fans feeling disappointed, confused, or even asking ourselves, why did we stay up for this? And as an Attitude Era kid, Survivor Series was a big deal growing up. It used to mean something. It was chaotic in the best way, team of superstars, unpredictable alliances, betrayals that could turn mid-card guys into overnight stars. However, in my list, you will see some Attitude Era Survivor Series. So when Survivor Series tend to fail, it fails loudly. In my humble opinion, these 5 shows did not just fall short. They made you question whether WWE at the time still understood what Survivor Series was supposed to be. But before we jump into the list, just want to say thank you to all of you out there who have been tuning in every week. 10, 50, 100 of you. I could have 5 of you, and I really appreciate it. Just to, have you choose this show to be part of your day. And most of these episodes I do are about 15, 20 minutes long. So I try to keep it short and sweet so you can move on without your day. But you're the reason the show keeps growing, and I really appreciate the Escape crew more than you know. And, please hit follow, share the show with other wrestling fans, and let them know it is on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. All right, let's get into it. At number 5, we have Survivor Series 2018. 2018 was a perfect example of WWE being so committed to a narrative that they were willing to sacrifice common sense and our fan enjoyment in the process. This was the year when WWE went all in on the Raw versus SmackDown scoreboard theme. And by the end of the show, it wasn't a competition. It was a burial. Raw won every single match. Final score, 6-0. Now, if this was done to tell a story that paid off later, fine. Dominance can work if there's a purpose behind it. But there was no payoff. It didn't elevate Raw. It didn't create new stars. It just made SmackDown and the show a huge portion of the audience preferred at the time. They looked like the B team that didn't belong in the same ring. Now, to be fair, there were some bright spots, in my opinion. I'm going to say this name, and you guys will be like, wait, really? Ronda Rousey versus Charlotte Flair was a solid match. It's intense. I thought it told a great story. Again, I'm a story guy. But even that was overshadowed by the booking surrounding it. You could feel fans wanting to be invested, and the energy just kept getting sucked out of the building. And then when a brand warfare pay-per-view like Survivor Series makes fan ask, why should I care about next year? That's a problem. Survivor Series 2018 wasn't unwatchable, but it was frustrating, and the booking choice alone earned its top spot on this list. Now, just because I'm burying these, and this is the top 5 worst list, doesn't mean that I haven't gone back to watch them. I did, and that's why they're on this list. Number 4, Survivor Series 1991. Now, we're going to rewind to a very different era. Survivor Series 91 had one job: continue the fun, chaotic Survivor Series formula that fans loved at the time. The elimination matches, the suspense, the unpredictable combinations of top stars and rising faces. But the show ended up being one of the more disjointed and commercially distracted pay-per-views that WWF at the time had produced up to that point. The biggest issue I had with it when going back and watching it was the constant promotion of This Tuesday in Texas. Throughout the pay-per-view, the commentary, backstage promos, and even the match flow were interrupted by them hyping up an upcoming event rather than making the current event feel important. It took fans, I thought, out of the moment. Definitely me going back and rewatching it. Instead of building to satisfy payoffs, Survivor Series felt like a 3-hour infomercial for a very different show airing a few days later. Now, there was one historic moment at that Survivor Series 1991, and that is when The Undertaker defeated Hulk Hogan to win his first ever WWF Championship. Massive piece of wrestling history right there. But I'm allowed to be critical. We all are. We're wrestling fans. Just the way it was done, with Ric Flair interfering and the match feeling more like an angle setup, and made the moment feel less like a coronation for Taker and more like a plot and a device to sell another show. And again, as an Attitude Era kid who later went back to rewatch this, the pay-per-view doesn't hold up well. I know I said in the beginning that I was going to try to do that too much, but it's just one of those shows where the legacy is bigger than the content itself. You go in expecting a classic because, you hear Undertaker versus Hulk Hogan, and on paper in 1991, whoa. But instead you get a pay-per-view that felt like filler, Survivor Series that should have never felt like filler. And in 91, I thought that it did. All these on the list, go back and watch them. I want you to let me know if they should be on the top 5 list or not. Moving on to number 3, Survivor Series 2015. Now, this is a show that had a real opportunity to be special and instead delivered one of the flattest and I think most forgettable pay-per-views of its era. This was the night that WWE held a tournament to crown a new WWE champion after Seth Rollins had gotten hurt and had to vacate the title, something that's recently just happened 10 years later. On paper, you would think that would raise the stakes and inject a little more unpredictability. A vacated world title is a big deal. It should create urgency, excitement, and new stars potentially. Instead, the show felt like it was stuck in neutral. Let's start with the crowd that night. From the very beginning, when I went back and rewatched, the energy just wasn't there. Not the wrestlers' fault, and maybe not the crowd's fault. Maybe they were there, they paid money, but they felt like the card itself could have been better. Again, not entirely the fans' fault. WWE really didn't give them a reason to care too much. The matches, especially throughout the first half, just felt kind of interchangeable. Nothing had time to breathe or build emotion. There was no standout classic. It was kind of like a checkbox of going through, okay, we have this match, right, let's go to the next one. Really no memorable Survivor Series elimination match that people talk about years later on there. Now, the finals of that world title tournament saw Roman Reigns defeat Dean Ambrose to win the WWE Championship. And that match could have told a great emotional story. Again, on paper, it did. 2 former Shield brothers, former partners, now fighting for the biggest prize. But the match itself was short, rushed, and lacked drama. And just when the moment was supposed to feel triumphant, WWE kind of pulled the rug out, but not in a good way. Remember, Sheamus cashed in his Money in the Bank briefcase, pinned Roman, and then he became champion. The crowd didn't really boo. They also didn't explode. It was more like, okay. It just wasn't shock. It wasn't anger. It was indifference. And I think, and it's hard going back, can you deliver on every single pay-per-view? No, you cannot. But that was the worst possible reaction that you can get, which is not a reaction. And again, as a wrestling fan watching that live, I do remember it felt like WWE was trying to manufacture kind of a moment rather than trying to really organically earn one. And again, rewatching it, it really didn't hit. There's no emotion, no spark, no legacy. And for a pay-per-view that should have been memorable simply because a brand new champion would be crowned, most fans barely remember the show, and that kind of tells you everything. So go back and watch that one. Let me know what you think. Now, before we continue our list, I do not have a crowd speak segment for this episode. However, I'm starting to develop some new segments, if you will. I will continue to do crowd speaks, but on the off episodes that do not have crowd speaks, I'm going to introduce a segment called Flashback Fumble. So, how appropriately for this episode, Top 5 Worst Survivor Series, I'm going to go back to a moment from 1990 Survivor Series. This is a segment that we dig up, the weirdest, wildest, and maybe just downright embarrassing moments that didn't make the top 5, but deserve some spotlight. So for this one, it was the Gobbledy Gooker. This was recently my cringe moment of the week. Now, with this, for weeks leading up to this show in Survivor Series 1990, fans were shown a mysterious giant egg sitting next to the entrance ramp. Speculation ran wild. Is it a shocking return? A new superstar? Something game-changing? And with an egg, can you really get that? No. But what hatched from the egg was, a man in a giant turkey costume. It was hyped for weeks. And when the moment finally came, out popped Hector Guerrero and full turkey feathers. He flapped, he danced with Mean Gene. At one point, Mean Gene did a cartwheel in the ring, got booed immediately. And the audience just went from confused to pretty hostile in real time. And it was in Hartford. And wrestling fans everywhere were like, we waited for this. It was meant to be a fun, family-friendly mascot moment, but that's not the crowd for it. It ended up being an all-time punchline. Adults were baffled, kids were booing. Segment went way on too long. Go back and watch it. It just really dragged. To make the moments even more insane, this is the same night that The Undertaker debuted. So really, WWE gave us one of the greatest gimmick debuts ever with The Undertaker. Kids were legit crying when he came out. And then one of the worst, back-to-back, it's like they were hedging their bets. The Gobbledy Gooker that was instantly shelved after that moment. WWE knew they fumbled. And while the character pops up every now and then for comedy, just like back in 2020 for the 24/7 title, which I will always love, he'll always be remembered as the ultimate example of hype with no payoff. That's why he took home Cringe Moment of the Week recently, and why he lives here forever in this new segment in the Flashback Fumble Hall of Shame. That is good. Wow. All right, let's go back to our top 5 list. We're on to number 2. Number 2, we have Survivor Series 2001. Now, this is kind of the era of Attitude Era, and then maybe Ruthless Aggression getting into there a little bit. Now, this one might surprise some people, because I'm not just going to do a basic list. I kind of want to ruffle some feathers, because I did go back and watch this. And it was going to be remembered as a historic night with WWF versus the Alliance storyline that ended. And look, on a surface level, like I said, major moment. A 5-on-5 winner-take-all match to determine which company would survive should have been one of the most emotionally charged, unforgettable matches of that era. And as an Attitude Era kid, man, I've said this 5 times already, and I'm sorry, but I have to keep referencing it. Anything involving the invasion storyline felt massive at that time. You saw the graphic, you heard the commentary hype it, and you felt like you were watching wrestling history in real time. But here's why it lands at number 2 for me. When you take away that nostalgia and rewatch it with clear eyes and go into it with no preconceived thoughts, the pay-per-view itself does not hold up the way fans remember it. I didn't remember it being that bad. The biggest problem, it never truly felt WWF versus WCW/ECW. The invasion angle was already on shaky ground because most of WCW's biggest stars at that time, like Goldberg, Sting, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, and others, they weren't a part of it. The Alliance side ended up being filled with WWF guys, which made the entire concept kind of feel off. Now, the main event did feature The Rock, Chris Jericho, Undertaker, Kane, and Big Show for Team WWF. So great names versus Stone Cold, Kurt Angle, Booker T, RVD, and Shane McMahon for Team Alliance. So like I said, it involved a lot of WWF guys. I mean, the lineup itself, half the Alliance team weren't even WCW or ECW originals. And the way that I wanted and that fans wanted. The match itself had drama, elimination, storytelling, which is good. The finish was extremely predictable. Of course, WWF was going to win. And the Jericho heel turn mid-match was interesting on paper. It didn't land the way I thought it should have. It took away from the final stretch rather than really elevating it. And again, as a kid watching it live, it felt huge. It felt emotional, like the end of an era. But going back and watching it recently, you realize how much better it could have been. Had they waited for the bigger WCW names or executed, with a little more star power representing ECW and WCW, Survivor Series 2001 could have been one of the greatest Survivor Series pay-per-views of all time. Instead, it became what could have been situation, and it's kind of why it earned my number 2 spot. The potential was there, but it just fell completely flat. All right. Number 1. Think of one. What do you think it is? Is it recent? Is it a golden era, new era, PG era, attitude era, ruthless aggression era? It was 1999 attitude era. 1999 Survivor Series. I think it was the worst one. Here's why. The card was a mess of last-minute changes. Unfortunately, it was all circled around Stone Cold Steve Austin. However, it was written out hours before the show due to the real neck injury storyline. This is where the infamous car hit and run came into play. WWE scrambled, replaced him with Big Show in the main event. Everything felt thrown together. Is it WWE's fault? Stone Cold got hurt? Not necessarily. But number 2, forgettable matches with zero heat. The show was overloaded with thrown together elimination matches with random teams, really no stakes, and no memorable builds. Most of the matches felt like filler to get talent on the card rather than progressing storylines. 3, terrible match quality. Outside of a couple of moments, the in-ring work I thought was flat, sloppy, and lacked crowd connection. Even the talent involved later admitted it wasn't a good show. Go back and do some research on that. And the WWF Championship that night, it's a triple threat, Triple H versus The Rock versus Big Show. Kind of patchworked together and left fans kind of cold. Big Show winning should have been huge, but with no build and all chaos leading into it, it landed flat. And then you had an angle that overshadowed the whole event. All fans remembered from the show is Stone Cold being run over. The pay-per-view is remembered for a backstage segment, not the wrestling, not the matches, not any Survivor Series tradition. That's a bad sign for a Big 4 show. So there you have it. My list of the 5 worst Survivor Series pay-per-views of all time. Some because the wrestling wasn't just good, some because the booking decisions were mind-baffling, and some because WWE lost sight of what made Survivor Series special in the first place. And unfortunately, I do think it is a dying pay-per-view, and I don't think it's going to be considered. It's not a top 4 in my book. And I used to look forward to it every year. Now it just kind of fell off for me. Now I just have the big 3 that I really look forward to, and plus Money in the Bank because of the stipulations. And if any of my top 5 stung you a little because you remember watching them live and wanting them to be great and you thought they were, just go back. I was right there with you watching them live. Go back and watch them and let me know what you think. Let's see if, a little perspective of being away and not watching those pay-per-views for 15, 20 years, what you think about it. However, next week, we are going to flip the script. Literally. We're going to break down the top 5 best Survivor Series pay-per-views of all time. So don't worry, I'm not just a negative guy. I also am going to go through what I think were the best Survivor Series of all time. The classics, the ones that remind us why Survivor Series should still matter. The ones that delivered moments that we still talk about today. Before you go, if you're enjoying Pro Wrestling Escape podcast, I have one quick favor to ask. Hit the follow button. Drop a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It helps grow the show. I cannot thank you guys enough. I'm Kyle, and this was your Pro Wrestling Escape. See you next week.